Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Cramer. I have Cameron Bawden with us. We're going to talk about creating a truly successful business, the power of mentorship, the power of transforming yourself. You are an awesome guy to have this conversation with, Cameron. I want to welcome you to the show. You've got to tell your story because I think right there, that's going to hook some people. They're going to be like, okay, first of all, this guy knows his shit. He's not just a wanna-preneur. Like you've created a lot of success for yourself. So let's introduce you. Let's give our audience a little taste of Cameron and your backstory.
Yeah, well, thank you. I don't know if you want me to get into it or if you want to get into it, but
You tell us your
yeah.
story.
So basically in 2010, I got off a mission for my church. And like a lot of missionaries, they get recruited to do door to door. And, I worked for another company for about 6 months and just quickly realized that not talking bad about that other company, but we're just like, hey, we can do it bigger and better. So literally put every single dollar we had, which was about 5 grand, into a pest control truck and started knocking doors, me and my business partner. And the first night we got 0 accounts, and I was thinking like, what did I just get myself into? And slowly we would accumulate some accounts, and now fast forward almost 14 years later, we're now the largest pest control company in Arizona. We have over 100 vehicles. We did $24 million in revenue last year. And we can get into it if you want, but about 5 years ago, there was a time where I opened up 5 other service companies in the span of about 18 months, and my I got my trash kicked. And it was fun because I was able to learn a lot about business, a lot about people. That's when I really hired my success and life balance coach, which is why I love, what you do and respect what you do, and why it's such a pivotal move that a lot of entrepreneurs need to make if they really want to take that next step in their career. It helped me. I was telling you before the show, I was stuck at that 10 to $12 million in revenue. And once I started to understand human psychology, not only so I could understand my employees better, so that I could understand myself better, I jumped up almost to $20 million. And obviously there's a lot of things that come into play, but a lot of it is the way in which I think and understand people. So it's been a crazy ride. It's been fun. And now I just love talking about business. And that's why I wanted to come on your podcast. So appreciate you having me.
Awesome way to kick things off. It was a short emotional journey with you from sort of the humble beginning to what you've really created for yourself. When we talk about getting into business, I just yesterday posted something on Facebook about this. We get into business because we have this dream. We've got this idea of what it means to be an entrepreneur. Some people refer to it as the American dream. It's not for everyone. We know that. I mean, it'll literally kick the shit out of you if you're not proactive about, sort of getting in the driver's seat. But there is a really common phenomenon that I've seen, and I've been working with business owners exclusively for over a decade, but I've been doing this type of work for almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
When someone gets in business, it's kind of like when you fall in love or when you first get married, right? There's all like the butterflies and you're just high on life. You've got that honeymoon effect. So exciting because right now you're like, I'm stepping into my dreams,
Yeah.
whatever that is, the freedom, the independence, the empowerment, the financial security, whatever your association with being an entrepreneur is.
Right.
And then shit gets real. And then you realize not only is there a massive learning curve to being successful in business, there's a lot of skills that I don't have, but I've got all of my own mental, emotional baggage that can slow me down, hold me back, beat me up. And that honeymoon phase is rarely lasting for the majority of business owners. So even business owners who have been in business for 20, 40 years, it can be just, this is less bad than getting a job. And somebody literally posted a comment, on that post, which is pretty much just like, after, 2 decades of doing this, corporate America can't give me anything. I'm just going to keep pushing, keep hustling.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that from your perspective, because you've created a lot of success for yourself, but you've taken the journey of learning the skills and learning that there's a whole inner work component to it. For those who are listening, who fell out of love, maybe they still are holding like a fragment of the dream, but the business is not exactly what they really truly want it to be. What kind of guidance would you give?
You cut out there for just a second, but you said like, what kind of guidance would you give if someone kind of like lost that love,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So I've had this unique opportunity to Green Mango was my pest control company that I started in 2010. That's the company that I've had the most success with. And then I've been able to start other companies. And like I said, like I got beat up, man, in those companies. And so it's kind of been interesting to see, okay, we did this at this company, we didn't do this at that company. And the advice that I'd give for people that, lost the love for it would be that like you need to understand your why. And your why needs to be so powerful that it carries you through the darkest days, right? Because it's not if, it's when you're going to have those. You're going to come short on payroll. You're going to have the disgruntled employee. You're going to have all those things. And so if you're a why, and this is where I think a lot of people get messed up in business, is that they start their own company because they're making about 60 to 80 grand a year working for someone else. And they're like, hey, if I can just make 100 grand a year working for myself, like I'm good. And then they get to 100 grand and then they get greedy and they're like, well, I need to make 200. And then they get to 200 and then it's three. And so they're always chasing this next thing. And as you chase the next thing, you're having to add more employees. You're having to add more office staff, more trucks, more overhead, all the things. And that's what gets caught up in like the hustle and bustle of entrepreneurship. And the original why was 100 grand. Because if you just want to make 100 grand in a company, it's pretty low stress. But once you start to, jump up and keep going, you're adding more people. That's when quote unquote, you know, get that love taken away from the business. And so if you want to be the biggest company, then that's your why. And you need to keep going and get through, I call it a season. Like you have these seasons of bad times and good times, and it's a roller coaster, right? You're going up and down. But if your goal was to get to 100 grand, making profit of 100 grand, like, and you got there, just keep going on that and then reevaluate and manage your expectations that, hey, if I go to 200 grand, like that's going to require a different measure and a different level of commitment. And then once you're going through that season, when it comes, like you're okay with it, and that love will be harder to diminish, if you will.
That's powerful. There are people who probably would be happy with the $100,000 income from their business if they didn't have the mental crap, the insecurities, like that's not good enough, I'm not successful enough,
Yeah.
which I think is a point that's not often talked about enough, because uh there's a lot of emphasis on more, 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 more. Like you have to have 1 million plus in revenue to even be considered a serious business owner or to be taken seriously, which I mean, all of these things are so superficial, and it's all coming from an individual's own sort of, lens of what success actually means. But from your perspective, I mean, what do you see? Because I know you're in the trenches, right? Like, what does success even mean? Like, what should someone be evaluating their metrics of success on?
It goes back to what do you like what was your original success? If it's 100 grand and you're now making 100 grand, which we all do it, you get there, you hit your goal, and then it's like that wasn't good enough. I'm going for the next, right? And so like success is whatever like you originally wrote down as success. And that's what's cool about goals. Once you hit them, like you can always go to the next level, but don't be beating yourself up. And I'm talking to myself, like we all do it, right? Like once I started making $1 million a year, it's like, okay, now I got to make 2 million. Then it gets to 2 million. It's like, okay, I'm a piece of crap. This guy's making 4 million. Now I got to get to four. And I'm just like, when I go home, it's like I have a beautiful home. I have the best family. I have everything I need. I don't stress about my utilities. I don't stress about food. I don't, like I have a great life. Like be happy with where I'm at. But I want to be real too, is like when you start to not fall in love, right? When you lose that love, it's usually when things are going poorly. And when things are going poorly, you tend to make up excuses. And so if you're sitting there falling out of love with your business, it's probably because you're not making money. It's probably because you're not hitting the goals that you wanted to hit. And I'm not trying to be that guy, but it's like, it's because you've let excuses win. And that's what I see almost every time when an entrepreneur is wanting to quit. It's because they can't figure out how to win. And the successful entrepreneurs are the ones that figure out a way when they hit I call it a roadblock, they find a way to make it a detour. Because in business, there will always be what appears to be a roadblock saying, hey, you just can't do this. It's impossible. It's like, you know what? You just can't accept that as an entrepreneur. And if you can learn that as an entrepreneur, your life will be changed. I have a little boy that's 10 years old, a little girl that's 7. It's my number one goal to teach them about that principle alone. And my wife hates it and it drives us crazy as kids, right? But it's like, hey, when someone tells you no, like figure out a way to help them tell you yes. I love, I'll tell a short story. We can get back into it, but we were at the baseball game the other day. My little boy, he's going crazy. Like literally he's kind of like me, like always busy, ADHD, like, he's like, Dad, like for 4 innings, he's like, Dad, I want a ball. I want a ball. I need to get a ball. And I'm like, figure it out. You want a ball this bad? Go figure it out. And he's like looking around, and he sees this lady next to the dugout, and he goes down there and he asks her like, hey, can I have a ball? And she originally says no. He comes back up and he just keeps eyeing her, waving at her, trying to smooth her over. 1 inning later, she grabs the ball and holds it up for me. He goes and grabs it. And I'm just like, that's what I'm talking about. Like he wanted it. He got told no. He kept smoozing her over for another inning or two. And then all of a sudden she holds up a ball and like, there it is for him. And it's amazing. And so too many entrepreneurs quit too early when they feel a little bit of resistance or the market says, you know what, that's just not going to work. And maybe that's true for that one area, but figure out a way to still hit your end goal by going a different way. And you'll fall in love again. And that's why, everyone's in love at the beginning of relationships. And you know this better than anyone, because it's like, there's no problems. Like you see a pretty girl, you see a hot guy, like everyone's happy. And then you get to know each other and all of a sudden they're doing something that you don't like. And now there's a problem, right? And so now you're not as in love with them. It's the same thing in business. You're in love with the business until it starts to go south.
I love this conversation. There are so many principles that are like foundational mindset principles in business. When you said that, my first thought was the saying or the book, is it a book? Excusitis, the failure disease. And then I heard Grant Cardone, talking about the whiny bitch. Like we all have a whiny bitch, like for real, everybody does. And that whiny bitch is really going to get loud when things feel like they're going the wrong direction. And that's the importance of doing the mindset work, because many of us are not programmed to find a way. Many of us have sort of been programmed to just give up. Like your parents say no, that means no.
Right.
Right. The teacher says no, that means no. You can't have that. There's not the money for that. You can't do that. That's not what we do. And in business, that will shut you down like really fast because there's going to be a lot more no's than there are ever going to be yeses. I love the story about your son. It reminds me of my daughter. She's 5. And I joke like I'm teaching her how to be a damn good negotiator. Like, and I'll say no sometimes, and sometimes I'll say no, but and kind of teach her because if she and my husband and I joke about this, it'll wear you down sometimes. On the one hand, it's like, oh my God, that is just a pain in the ass to deal with. But on the other hand, you're like, we don't want her to lose that.
We don't want to. I taught my little boy, when someone tells the phrase like, well, what would I have to do in order to, in his case, like he likes to stay up later or go to the cousin's house or whatever. It's like, no, you can't, you can't stay up late. Well, what would I have to do in order to stay up late? My wife freaking hates that because it's just like, hey, like just tell me what I need to do. There's got to be something, and that's the powerful, teaching the principle and learning it at this young age because so many parents like you said, it's a pain as a parent to be negotiated with 24/7, but you don't want to kill that. Like that's what you need out of an adult when they enter the real world. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about your mindset journey. You mentioned to me before we started recording that you went through that pretty transformational period working with your coach. Tell us a little bit about that story. I'm curious.
So what's funny is I just had him over last night again, and but I met this guy when I was a little boy, when I was 8 years old, and he told the stories like, Cameron, when I met you, I knew you were either going to be a multimillionaire or you were going to be in prison. I didn't know which one, honestly, but I knew it was going to be one of those. And I was like, I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but when I was in 2018, I called my dad and I just felt like something was missing in my life. Like everything was working in business. I forget exactly how much we were doing in revenue, probably around 17 or 18 million. And but I called my dad and I was like, hey, like something's missing in my life. I don't know what it is. And he's like, it's time for you to coach with Mark. And this is the coach. And I was like, all right. So the next day I called Mark that night. The next day I'm at lunch with Mark, and you'll laugh at this because you understand ego. I remember sitting down with Mark and he started to talk about ego. And I said, I don't think I really have an ego. Like I'm a pretty laid back guy. And he just started laughing. And that was kind of the introduction to like what he was about to teach me about ego and about how we're all in ego. And so, normally people coach for about a year with this guy. I coached with him for 2 years, maybe because I needed more time or whatever, but it was 100 grand a year and it was the best money I ever spent. It was 1 hour a week. We would be on the call, and by the end of the call, my brain would just be fried because I'd bring him problems. And what's funny is it seemed like it always led back to I'm okay. Everything always works out, and trying to disengage the ego and those three things. And so that's what I definitely haven't mastered it, but that's what I've tried to, teach all my managers. That's what I've been focusing on. And really, like when you think about it, like everyone's just walking around wondering if they're okay, period. And so if you can help those people feel like they're okay, the way in which they'll perform will increase, 10x on your business and in their personal life. We spend more time at work than we do at home. We don't want people coming to work dreading that time. So I don't know. I love a coach. I tell people, any entrepreneur that I meet, I tell them like, hey, if you haven't had a life coach, or I know everyone's got kind of their different name, but a success and life balance coach or a therapist or whatever, like someone that can, really just speak to you. Because not a lot of people will, square up to the CEOs and tell them like, hey, like you're being a jerk. Hey, your ego's engaged, like take a break. And you need someone that can have that you've given permission to just call you out on your stuff. One of the things that I loved within the first month, my coach had me give him names of 5 people of my closest people that I work with and best friends. And he called them and he would ask them like, hey, what's 3 things that you hate about Cameron? Like, what are his worst traits? And we focused on those things. And it was just, it literally changed my life. I wouldn't be where I'm at today without going through those exercises because they don't talk about that in school. Right. Like I didn't know what ego was. And maybe I'm just the guy in the room that doesn't, but most people don't truly understand ego and what to look for and actually what to do when it's engaged. I was in a meeting yesterday And one of my partners, like you could tell he would just got fired up and straight in ego, and rightfully so. And I just looked over and I said, "Hey, let's go take a break real quick. Like let's come back to this in like 10 or 20 minutes, and like let's just go walk around." And it's like just that little principle rather than plowing through when people are in ego, like nothing works, right? We could talk about that forever, but coaching is the best, man. It'll change your life as an entrepreneur.
Uh, I've got to share a little joke, and this is something that I only do with certain clients because not everybody's at that level yet, but I do it at home. I do it with my husband. I do it with my teenage son, and my daughter, not so much because she has no clue what ego means. If I say it, it goes over her head, but somebody gets fired up and I'll literally just say, "Hey, ego, calm down."
They're like, and at first they want to fight back, and then they're like, okay.
At this point, it's a pattern interrupt, it's just like, oh shit, yeah, okay, just,
You said you have a teenager. Is it a boy or a girl?
boy, yeah, my son is 14.
Wow.
So um he he has a nice balance of being a typical 14-year-old boy with a lot of nurturing from someone who understands negative imprinting. So, but there's still plenty of ego. My husband, on the other hand, there's a lot more work there that,
Your
we've been
teenager
working on him for almost 20 years. So
well, your teenager will be light years ahead if he's already learning about ego at 14. That's awesome.
there are people who are probably listening who, like you, are like, I don't have an ego. I just don't need that. I don't need the help. I found that many individuals who've come to me over the years, they're really trying to hide their secret shame, even if it's someone who can help them. And now
Yeah.
this is something I've called myself out on this too. Like I am totally, totally, totally guilty of this. And even my awareness of it, I mean, thank God I'm aware of it because I can usually work myself through it. But the ego will hold us back. So for you to come in to say, hey, listen, you can be successful and you can become more successful. You don't have to be rock bottom necessarily. A lot of people have this idea that the only time that you get help from a therapist or a coach or whatever is if you're just a complete fucking disaster.
Yeah. That's when you really need it. But if you want to get ahead of the game, like you'll be proactive. And that's what business is too. I was thinking the other day, I'm like, I was asked on a podcast, someone says, like, who's your biggest competition? Who do you fear the most? And I wasn't trying to sound arrogant. I'm like, I really like, I don't feel like anyone's competing with us right now. I really don't. And I've thought about that. I'm like, that's kind of scary. I can't be feeling all cozy up here. Like that's not a good feeling. And as an entrepreneur, if you don't have any challenges, it means you're not pushing hard enough. And so if you're sitting back, like you're about to get rocked somehow, some way, and you might as well get ahead of it with coaching because it'll, like I said, I can't say enough good things about it. Like it will literally change your life. Like you guys need to do this. Okay. Like pay your bills, whatever, and then do this like before you go on vacation. If you're wanting to like grow to that next step. And going back, like people just have to want to do it. Like they have to be committed and they have to want it because, I've paid for coaching for other people and they just didn't get the same, result out of it. And I was trying to bless their lives. Like, here, I'll pay for it. And they enjoyed it, but when you're paying whatever it is, 8 grand a month, each call's 2 grand, it's like you're going to pay attention for that hour. Like the money's on the line, and you're going to focus. And the people that reject coaching, that's okay. They're just not ready yet, and they'll come around at a certain point. So
There's so much more I know we could talk about on this topic. I'd love to, though, for the next couple of moments that I have with you, because I kind of just want to keep you to myself. I mean, part of it is my ego, right? Because you're like, yeah, your industry is great. go to Alicia. But for those entrepreneurs who are still with us, they're still listening. I mean, you've got so much experience under your belt. I'm just curious if you had a piece of advice that you could give someone who had a desire, they do have the love in their heart for their business. They feel that inner drive to grow and to expand for themselves, for their family, for their employees. What guidance would you give?
And that's a great question. You need to have, if you have the love, you need to make sure that like everyone's going to win with you. Like the people are the most important. And I'm even learning it, today, is that like if you don't have good people around you to where you don't love coming in, like even if you love it right now, you don't have the right people around you, like that love won't last very long because it's going to become a toxic environment. And so like my advice for people is two things. Like one, make sure you have the right people around you because you are who you surround yourself with. I truly believe that. If you're around someone that smokes all day, like you're going to become a smoker. If you sit around someone that is fit and work out with them every day, like you're going to become fit and you're going to want to live a better lifestyle. Like that's number one. And then I've talked about it a lot and I truly believe it is that, anytime in business you find someone telling you no, like it's your job as an entrepreneur to figure out how to turn that into a yes. And you need to do that for your employees because people rely on you. You're paying people's, mortgages, you're paying their food, their gas, their everything. And so it's your job to protect the company and figure out how to make it work. And that's a lot of weight. That's a lot of weight on you. But if you do that, you'll be successful.
This has been an amazing conversation. Cameron, how can our listeners connect with you?
The easiest way is just on Instagram. It's the first letter of my name, C, and then Bawden, Bawden. And yeah, I love to connect with people there. I have a podcast, Premium Mindset, where I do with my business partner. We talk all about the good and the bad. I'm like you, like we try not to edit really any of it. It's just raw, just like, hey, this is really what's going on. These are our challenges. And then I do another one that's called Flying High with Cam. I actually do a podcast in my helicopter to where we're flying around Arizona, interviewing people and talking, getting to know their story. And so it's fun. So check that out and I'd love to connect with you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Super fun conversation. I personally very much enjoyed having you on. I'm sure our listeners enjoyed listening to everything that you shared. So thanks for taking the time to be with us and doing all the amazing things that you're doing.
For sure. Nice to meet you. Appreciate you.
And thank you to all of our listeners. We're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.